freaking, come on, one more, come on. What are you doing? Why'd you stop? He's right here.
Thanks.
Thank you, man. Thank you for making time. I know you're super busy. You got a million stops to make. It means a lot that you made us one of the stops and you're here hanging out with us. Congrats on this book, dude. This is huge. Second book. Super exciting times, right? How are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling good.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah, that's important to me. We've got a lot of stuff to unpack and get into, but I always like to just find out first just, how's Scott, man? How are you doing?
I'm good. I was wondering if I could take this home.
You want this?
Yeah, that's really nice.
I believe it's bolted down, but I'll help you carry it, honestly. We'll see how it goes. The second book, very exciting. You know, I'm the Man came out a little while ago. What after that experience, how long after the first book were you like, I'm going to do another one? What made you decide to run into a second book?
Well, my first book did well enough for me to get a second book.
That was it?
Yeah, that's all it took.
They called you up. They were like, this was good.
I just had ideas. I had all these stories. I just keep ideas all the time. I write things down, and I knew I had a lot of other stories to tell that didn't fit into the flow of an autobiography, and so I asked my editor. I said, "Hey, I've got like a half a dozen of these stories already written out, and you think you'd be interested?" And he said, "Well, you tell your agents to shop it." Basically, and next thing I knew, I had a second book, and then of course the reality of now I have to write it, and that took a year, but it's a lot of fun and it's really hard. Yeah. But it's a lot of fun, and now being on the other side of it is great because I don't have to think about it anymore.
Well, right? I mean, talk about that moment, though, when you walk in. It just came out yesterday, I believe, was the official release date, right?
Yes.
12th, right. You walk in the store, here's this thing that took you over a year to do, more than that, because you conceptualize it, then a year to write it, over a year to write it, and you see stacks of them all there. It's a real thing. What does that feel like when you see it done, when you, for the first
Anxiety, because now you have to sell it. It's fun creating things, but then you have to actually worry about the commercial part of the whole thing. Same as making a record.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
You know,
how does that line up with that?
You know, so it's a feeling that it's not new to me. Yeah. You spend all this time writing songs and recording an album and doing all that, and then it comes out in the stores, and then, you know, you have to sell your album. And granted, that's not why we do things. We never really worried about that, but it is a part of what we do, obviously. And if, you know, you obviously want people to like what you do, at least you hope people will connect with it. And, you know, but that's, for me, the book is different because it's only me. Yeah. You know, it's not the band. It's all my responsibility, which I totally welcome. So in that aspect, it's different. So, like, I'll go to the Strand tonight to do the signing I'm doing after this, and I'll see big stacks of books, and I'll just be like, God, I hope these don't get sent back.
let's move these. Let's move this product. Let's get this book moving.
Please.
Well, was that one of the things that drew you to becoming an author in the first place? Was it was a project that was?
I want to sell books.
No. The part
I
where,
want to worry about selling books.
Yes, this was a great way to do that. Was to worry about selling books. No, the part about where it's a creative outlet, but it's all about something that you put yourself into. It's a new challenge versus you've been doing records for years, been making music with bands for years, but you've never just, this is all Scott.
Well, I always fancied myself as a writer, even though, I mean, I've been writing lyrics for the band since like '85, and I always considered myself a writer, even though I was writing lyrics, and writing lyrics is completely different than writing anything else, because you're trying to fit words into these, you know, segments of songs, and I mean, it's not that there's restrictions, but it's a completely different thing.
Yeah, it's different.
You're writing words that have to fit a certain attitude and vibe, and you're dealing with rhyming, and there's all these other things with lyrics that make it unlike anything else. But I just always called myself a writer, and until push like really came to shove. On the first book, on the autobiography, I had written, I don't know, maybe about 100 pages of stuff, and realized I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't have a clue. I don't know how to write a book, and that's why I started working with John Wiederhorn on the first book, because I didn't know what I was doing, and at least I was kind of honest enough with myself to know that I need to work with somebody, otherwise this book's going to be a big pile of shit.
It's going to be a mess.
Yeah. So. And then through that process of working with John on the first book, obviously I didn't write a second autobiography.
No, yeah, this one's it's
Although
much
I
different.
could have done that and said, choose which one you believe. But
I kind of like that angle.
yeah, which
Just
story
keep
is
churning
real?
them out, dude. Write like 10 of them, and we'll never know.
Exactly. But but at least I had a really good idea on how to do it moving forward. So that's why in this book it's just all me, and I was able to do it. Granted, the workload is obviously double, in a sense, because I didn't work with anybody else. But at least I knew what I was doing, and I had the confidence going in to know that I can do this.
Right.
And my editor, same editor on both books, he had the confidence in me. And sometimes, like, I would hit him up and be like, "What the hell am I doing here?" And he'd be like, "Just keep going." And and my wife Pearl was always kind of just a voice of reason for me. Like, so I'd be having crazy anxiety over, I can't finish this. I'm never gonna finish. I'm never gonna get done. It's not working. And she'd be like, "Just cool it. You'll be fine. You know what you're doing." But yeah, it's a lot of work.
Speaking to that level of work, there's a part at the end of the book where you thank your wife and all your friends and a bunch of people that you had to call up to help you with the where, whys, and whens. And I'm wondering how some of those phone calls looked like, especially with some of these stories. Like, man, the time you guys break into Kirk's and the dime bag phone call alone are worth the price of admission on this book. I'm wondering, when you're repiecing the pieces together and you're calling these people up, were there ever moments where they would say a part of the story and either you were surprised because you didn't remember it, or maybe you thought somebody else did it and they were like, "Nah, dude, that was you"?
Well, something I realized soon after having, I don't know, half of these stories written was that for a guy that doesn't really drink all that much and didn't drink in the 80s at all, really, when the band was coming up, and doesn't drink that much now, but there was a period in my life from the early 90s into the early 2000s, a solid 10-year run there. Because if you read the book, you'll see it's like, he seems like this guy was drunk a lot.
Yeah,
most of these stories are centered around me being an idiot. And
I didn't know Scotty didn't drink that much.
Yeah, well, I had a great run.
You had a really good run.
And so, yeah, there are certain stories, like you mentioned the Kirk story. Yeah, I remember the broad strokes, but I actually had to hit up Mark Azagueda from Death Angel and Charlie and Frankie from Anthrax, and I think I might have hit up Lars from Metallica, and just to kind of Lars' old assistant, this guy Steve, who was there, just to kind of fill in some of the blanks on how did we go from A to B, B to C, and then C to hell. Like, what the heck were we thinking, and how did we get in his house again, and who had the alarm code, and it was. And the more and more I spoke to people, we were able to kind of, get it all together, and then the story made sense.
Was it fun to, prior to even thinking of sitting down and writing this book, had you revisited these memories? Because reading this book, it just feels like as I'm reading it, I'm sitting with you at a bar and you're holding court, just telling stories about the glory days, all these crazy things you did. Is that sort of where these stories, why they were kind of crystallized to the degree that they were? Do you tell them a lot? Did you share them a lot with friends?
Some of them, yeah. I've been out. I've been out on what I call my talking tours. I don't know, started about 4 or 5 years ago, where I'll just go out and tell stories. So like the Daryl thing, that story called The Conversation, I've told that one live many times. The Lemmy story, I've told that one live a few times. Although the written version of that story in the book now, I think it's called Your Hero Shouldn't. I can't even remember how the hell the title goes. I know it's something with Daisy Dukes, but
yeah.
I've told that story live too. But I think this written version of it is the first time I've ever had the complete story with the ending, the kind of the afterword with him later on. And so yeah, there are a bunch of these stories that I've either told live, and certainly I've been telling the friends. There's others that have never been told before. It's the first time as me just writing them, like Meet Me Under Ace Frehley or my Walking Dead story, or a whole bunch of them. The first time I've ever told them was writing them for this book. And I try my best to, as I'm writing, I try and keep things very visual. That's what I want the reader to experience. I want them to feel like they're there. Like in Meet Me Under Ace Frehley, I tried really hard to paint a picture of Manhattan in 1977 and what it was like to be growing up in the city at that time and going to concerts and hounding the guy at the record store for when are tickets going on sale. And I experienced it doesn't really exist anymore for people under a certain age. And I think I did a really good job of describing and kind of filling out that photograph for people.
You totally, especially the train portion when you were describing like the train ride in to get there and how you guys were pressed against the glass.
It was a big deal. You know, I grew up in Queens, and coming to the city in the '70s, like especially at 13, Manhattan was the Manhattan of the movie Taxi Driver. It's not this Disneyland Manhattan that exists now. Manhattan was a dirty, crime-ridden, filthy place like you see in movies and TV shows in the 70s. It wasn't like this. It was cheap and filthy and awesome. As a 13-year-old coming to the city, it was a big deal. Even though Queens was the city, Manhattan was the city. And so getting to come to the Garden for that Kiss show, which, by the way, strangely enough, tomorrow is the 40th anniversary of that show.
Really?
And so coming in the city for the first time without any parental supervision at 13, getting to do that was it. That was the moment in my life where everything changed on December 14th, 77. And it's really why I'm sitting here now talking about a book I wrote, because I never left that path after seeing Kiss that night.
Well, it really is an incredible moment, and I loved everything that in the book that leads up to that moment. Even just like your description of the first time you heard the song, and it was on the radio, and you didn't know who was playing the song. You didn't know where the song was from.
Talking about rock and roll. All
rock
night
and roll,
from
yeah,
Kiss.
exactly. So now that song's ingrained in you. You don't know who it is. Then you guys accidentally discover that it's Kiss on TV one night after making a prejudgment based on the makeup.
Yeah.
Right. So all of this. Then you got to go down to the record store. You got to get this track. All these different things. This discovery. You already loved this song, but I think there's something to be said about the process of making it your own, of like hunting it down and finding it.
Yeah, there was nothing back then.
No.
There was nothing. You had monthly rock magazines that by the time you would get the magazine, everything had already happened. You know what I mean? It's so there was no way to find out about anything unless you happened to be listening to the radio when a DJ might have announced that tickets were going on sale, or you would go to the record store every day and hound the dude that worked there who hated us because we would go in every day and ask him when were Kiss tickets going on sale. He didn't know, but we would, and he was like this 20-year-old dude who was into Iggy Pop. He hated Kiss, and we drove that guy nuts.
But he was the guy. If anybody in your circle of existence was going to know, he's the guy.
He had the power.
He was the one.
He had the Ticketron machine. He could key in Kiss and see, and he would type it in begrudgingly, and he would type that in and just kind of give us a nope, and we're like, oh, come on.
Yeah. Is there, because you're raising a little dude, is there any, I know the answer to this, there's not. It's a different world entirely. It's a different universe now. But do you ever find yourself trying to sort of recreate or create an environment where your kid can have a discovery of some new music? Because right now there's this convenience where, hey, you should listen to this thing. I've listened to it. I know who it is. I'm either into it or I'm not. It's different now.
Well, he plays DJ in the car now. He knows how to work a phone, and he knows how to go on Spotify, and he knows how to do all that stuff. So constantly, like currently Guns N' Roses is his thing, because he had heard them kind of peripherally, like in the background and stuff, in the house. But then I think a combination of two things. The Welcome to the Jungle is in the trailer for the new Jumanji movie.
That'll do it.
So he really wants to see that, and he heard that song, and then we took him to Guns N' Roses at the Forum in L.A. last week, and that cemented it. So it's been 2 weeks ago. So it's been nonstop now. GNR Appetite, which I don't mind because I love that record. So nonstop. It's all about them. It's all about Axl and Slash, and he's. I mean, I gotta say, my son has good taste. He's in a lot of good stuff, and he could reel off songs and what record it's on from Iron Maiden or Van Halen or Kiss and it's like, oh, thank God he's into good music.
Knock on wood, right?
Yeah.
Did he, so when he heard it in the trailer, did he come to you and he was like, Daddy, what song is this?
Well, he already knew.
He already knew.
He knew what it was because he had already heard Guns N' Roses, but it wasn't something he was so into yet. There was other bands he was really into, but now after seeing them live and getting to see it, the real version of it, now he's just all about it.
So there's still like a version of The Hunt, right? He still had to like find Guns N' Roses. It just was a shorter path than I guess we ever had.
Yeah, but we go to the record store. There's plenty of vinyl shops out in L.A. and we go to the record store and he just says, go pick out something you want just based on the album cover. I don't say anything. He'll just go through the metal racks and stuff and look at things that he thinks look cool and he'll go, what do you think of this? I'm like, well, I'll already know, but what do you think? And like I remember like him picking out like a Number of the Beast vinyl at some point because it obviously looks really cool.
It's doing its job.
And I'm like, yeah, I think that's a pretty good record. One tear coming down.
I got to turn it over to audience in a second. I'm going to, but there was something I wanted to ask you. SOD comes up in the book naturally because it's your book, but talks about the unintended influence on ministry and stuff like that. And I think it was it been like 10 years since we got the last SOD record, like the last one, right?
Well,
it was like 2007.
The last real one. Well, that's longer than 10 years ago.
Yeah,
we put out that Bigger Than the Devil thing in 99.
99, okay.
So how long is that? 18 years ago?
18, jeez, all right.
Yeah.
Well, here's the reason I bring it up, right? For me, those lyrics, Sergeant D, the whole thing was always like, it was intentionally misogynist. It was intentionally racist. It was about shining a light. One was to piss people off, right?
Well, no. We were making fun of.
Making fun of it, right?
Those people who are that way.
Precisely.
We were making fun of racists. We were making fun of misogynists. We were making fun of jerks.
And
we were making fun of people that dressed. Well, that was kind of wrong, but just what we considered posers in the '80s. Like we were making fun of posers. We obviously anyone who knew me or Danny Lilker certainly knew we weren't racists,
right.
And that's why I always kind of, especially back in the day, refused to ever even answer those questions about Speak English or Die, because I was like, if you have to ask me that question, then I can't even like.
There's a great line. It's like, it's not my job to educate you how to.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Like,
I love that line.
Anyone who would take that seriously on a record that has a song about milk, I mean, it's like you're really not paying attention.
Yeah, you missed the boat. So the question behind all of that was, has there been any talk of, it just feels like that band would be really appropriate in the current climate and conversation right now. Has there been like a desire to bring that out, to point the finger at those people again and laugh at them like you guys did all those years ago?
Yeah. It's weird. We're kind of living in this crazy time of, on one hand, the political correctness thing is like out of control. Like I've been having this conversation with many people now, especially with the sexual harassment thing, that kind of, the Weinberg thing opened the door for that whole thing, and granted, and it should all come crumbling down. But, sometimes I think, like, has it gone too far, political correctness? But at the same time, there's a section of society now and in the media where I feel like there's no political correctness, and certain people just get away with saying whatever they want, whenever they want. Our president. Right. And I'm not going to start a big political discourse here, but look, I grew up in New York City. I grew up in a city where we know who that guy is. So he did, and I don't care. Everyone has their own opinion, and I have mine. It doesn't matter if I'm in a band or not. But I grew up in New York City. I know who that guy is, and he fooled. Apparently he fooled 30% of America. That's what it is. But and I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I don't subscribe to any party. But yeah, I think Sergeant D would have a lot to say about a lot of the things going on right now, and it's something I do think about quite a bit. There was a moment where I was going to start a Sergeant D Twitter thing, and it was going to be completely undercover, and I was trying to get some of my comedian friends to help me with it and just use it as a way to really just rip things on both sides. Because I can't stand super ultra left liberal stuff either. It's too much. Yeah. Like, it's too much. And but that was I don't know who's time in the day to start worrying about tweeting every day. But I think about it a lot, and believe me, I'm constantly writing. So whether or not that leads to a new SOD record at some point, I don't know, but it could come out in another way. In
another way, for sure. All right, I got to turn it over to the audience. I believe we got some microphones in the room. The first question we're going to take is right over here.
Hi.
Hi.
I've seen you guys live a lot of times. Like, I've seen you when you played literally stages in the middle of the day in the parking lot, you know, the second stage in the festivals,
Sure.
in huge venues. And what I noticed about Anthrax, which is very uncharacteristic for other bands that has been around as long as you guys have, that your audience ranges from 50-year-old suburban dads in polo shirts and glasses and khakis to 12-year-old, you know, preteens and Pierce the Veil shirts.
Right.
And everybody knows all the words to your songs. Everybody knows every song. Everybody's really into it. What makes you guys relevant through all these years? What's
My
the
beard.
secret?
It's the beard. The beard keeps us relevant.
You said I was avoiding the beard
Yeah.
all the time.
No, I mean, God, if I really knew the answer to that question, I'd write that book and you know, and sell The Secret. How to stay relevant. You know, we just do our best. We do our best writing songs and making records, and we do our best as a live band. And I think we've done a good job after all these years of connecting with people and making good records and being a great live band. I think that's really where, from day one, before we even knew how to write a song, and we would play in church basements in Queens, covering Priest and Maiden, we were lunatics on stage because we felt like, well, if we're up there really selling it and up there, like if we have 5 Anguses instead of just 1 Angus, if we're all headbanging like a lunatic, no one's gonna even realize that we're A, covering songs, and B, we're not really that good. We really knew how to sell it. And eventually you start learning how to write songs, and of course that changes. But the live thing for me has always been, I think, why for me, because I think we're a great live band. I really do. And I think that's been one of the main things that's kept us, you know, even through the years when we didn't make a record, let's say, from We've Come For You All, which came out in 02 or 03, all the way up to Worship Music, you know, almost 9-10 years without an album. But we toured pretty heavily still through all those years without a record out. And because we're a great live band, people still wanted to come see us. And we're old. And a lot of kids who didn't get to see us in the 80s or the 90s are getting to see us for the first time now. And I'm just glad we're still doing this as well as we can.
It's funny you were talking about how when you guys started in the early days, you just really sold it, and then you kind of learned along the way. And it's like you sort of did the same thing with poker, where you just walked in, didn't let anybody know that you had no idea what was going on, and you just learned the game.
No, I told everybody I didn't know how to play.
Well, yeah, that's true. The guys that were teaching you how to play, they were like, so how many times? I think there was one person where you said you played a little bit.
Yeah, no, I had no idea how to play Hold'em.
No idea.
And as a fluke, I won that tournament and played poker professionally for 5 years, which is crazy. And if you read the book, you'll read the story. But I'm not a gambler at all. Gambling is the antithesis of my relationship with money. I don't mind spending money on the stupidest shit in the world. I saw the phone charger in the back, and I'm like, I gotta take a picture of this because I'm gonna buy this on Amazon as soon as we get out of here. I don't need it. I don't mind spending money. But gambling, forget about it. The idea of losing money playing a game, fuck that. Yeah. I became a poker player because I instantly realized, once I took it seriously, that it's not gambling, and I had an affinity for it, and I got really good at it fast. And but once online went away, and I wasn't playing with the house money basically because I was being paid to play poker. Yeah. Talk about the best job in the world. Once, like if it's up to me to go to a casino, I'm not doing that. If someone wants to buy me into a tournament, great. I'll take that down, but I'm not spending my own money.
Is that sort of skill set something that you think is unique for you in terms of just like music and poker, or have you found, because you've done a million things, man, you've been on a million different shows, you have a million different projects, have you always been the guy to just, I'm just going to go in blind, I'm going to figure it out as I go? Has that always been like how you operate?
I usually don't like to do that. Yeah. That poker tournament thing that I did was really just, I knew a bunch of the other dudes, Ace Frehley and Vinnie Paul and Sully from Godsmack and Dusty from ZZ Top. And I was like, I know the guy putting this on for VH1. We could probably get a free couple of days in Vegas on VH1's dime. And And that was really the whole reason to go do that, was because I wanted to go hang out with Vinny and drink in Vegas. And it turned into this whole, like, the next 5 years of my life, which is crazy. But no, I usually don't like to fly by. I'm kind of a meticulous planner. I'm very much a Vulcan in that way, like Spock. I'm a very logical, kind of meticulous person with most of the things in my life.
Got it. Great question. Next one is from over here in the back.
Hi. How has writing a book affected your songwriting?
You know, they're so different. It's such a different thing that I don't know that. I mean, I haven't started working on lyrics for future Anthrax yet, which that'll be sometime next year. So who knows? Maybe it will influence somehow. But up till this point, you know, after working on the last book and even comics I've written or whatever, I don't know that I don't know that the two cross over for me in my brain in any way, shape, or form. Like, I could write books on the road. When most of this book, Access All Areas, was written on tour over a year and a half in dressing rooms and hotel rooms and on the bus and on airplanes. I can't write lyrics on tour at all. Being in the mindset of touring and playing shows, I'm so focused on doing that. But because I think writing a book is so different for me, it's not based around records and shows. I'm able to separate it in my brain, whereas lyrics, I can't. I try and use my time creatively on tour, and if it means writing lyrics, I can't do it. I just sit there and I just stare at the screen. It's just, and nothing happens.
That's interesting, man. Well, there's a great chapter, The Lesson in English, or Violence in English. Are you going to work, what is this, abassinate? Was that the word that you opened?
Abassinate.
Abassinate. You think you're going to, have you been folding that into daily conversation since you learned it or no?
No, because it's so,
it's pretty intense.
It's Slayer's lyric.
Yeah.
I can't, you know, only one band can use abassinate in a lyric or even in conversation.
Has that, exploring those words and exploring their lyrics?
For those of you who don't know, it's from the song Angel of Death. I have a chapter in the book about learning English through metal. And discovering words in Slayer lyrics that, and I consider myself to have a pretty big vocabulary. I talk good, but there were these words I would hear in Slayer lyrics that I'd be singing along to and have no idea what they were saying. One of which was this word abassinate from the song Angel of Death. I sang that word for years, not knowing what it was, just singing along with them. So I finally looked it up, and only to find out that it was a torture. It was a torture method where they would heat up like a piece of metal, a sheet of metal, super, super like molten hot, and then hold it in front of somebody's eyes until the eyeballs melted out of your skull.
Brutal.
And of course, Jeff Hanneman would write those lyrics. So yeah, it made me love Slayer even more when I learned what it actually meant. So there's a chapter in my book about learning English through Slayer.
Writing that chapter, do you think it's opened doors in your mind to use either words you've never even heard of before or make up a couple? Like, has it freed you a little bit, do you think, as you're getting ready to go into that process?
Well, I think with lyric writing, when it comes to, you know, you have a structure arrangement-wise with songs where you have your verse and a chorus and you're fitting words into certain sections, and even with counting syllables to make sure things are going to work phrasing-wise, and you want to use words that are going to sound good in your hook. But as far as words, the actual words themselves, there's no rules. Like, I'll use wrong words, and grammar means nothing, and I'll make up shit. It doesn't matter. Like, as far as words go, if it sounds right, sometimes I've written songs for me that are complete stream of consciousness. One line has nothing to do with the next, and I'll have people come up to me and go, God, I really love that song. What it mean? And I'm like, I'm glad you found meaning in that, because it meant nothing to me.
It meant nothing.
It meant, but at the same time, it does, because it was actually a challenge to myself to not have a song that needed, like, where I'm telling a story and has meaning. I was able to just string a whole bunch of lines together that sounded great, but really there was nothing behind it.
Interesting. I think one more. We've got time for one more question. Right from here.
So you just mentioned you wrote comics, and I know you wrote the Lobo comic for DC
Yes.
a little while back. And how did that come about? And do you plan to write any more graphic novels or any narrative stories going forward?
He asked about you asked how that came about that I got to write Lobo for DC. I got a call randomly from my manager saying, hey, next time you're in New York, these editors up at DC would like to meet with you. And I said, why? And he said, I don't know. Are you interested? And I said, yeah. He said, worst case, you get a tour and get to see the archives and get to see all the old comics and whatnot. I was like, yeah, I would love to. And cut to a few weeks later, I was here in New York, and I went up and had this meeting and sat down with these editors, and they told me, we think, we're fans, and we read stuff you've written online, and we think you have a point of view, and we'd like to know if you'd be into taking a comic from our universe, a character from the universe, and writing a comic. And I literally turned around to see if Grant Morrison was standing behind me, because I was like, wait, me? Yeah. You want me? Because it's my lifelong dream. I've been into comics before I knew how to play guitar. Before anything, it was comic books. That's the first. Comics and horror, right around the same time. Because I think horror first, because I was already watching horror movies before I knew how to read. So comic books second. But it was my dream come true, And then Lobo came about because I was a fan of the character. But I said, so you're telling me I could pick any character in the DC universe and write a story? And they said, yeah. I said, so I could write a Batman story. And they're like, well, and because they said, well, characters like that, kind of the A-list characters, there's a lot of rules when it comes to those. If you're Grant Morrison or some of the big top name, Alan Moore, whoever, characters like that, you could do whatever you want if you're one of those writers. Me, not so much. And then one of the editors said, what do you think of Lobo? And I was like, I love Lobo. He's great. And they said, there's no rules with Lobo. And I said, cool, okay. And then I asked them, I said, well, this was at the time when Marvel Zombies, I don't know if you remember that book, Robert Kirkman, the Walking Dead guy. Marvel Zombies was like the biggest book out at that time. And I said, it's kind of trippy to me that DC hasn't done anything like horror related because of the, I know you guys don't want to do the same thing as Marvel, but still, they're killing it, and all these editors were like, we know, but it's come down from the top. We can't do this, and it can't look like we're copying Marvel, but you can, because you're outside of our system. You're just doing this almost like a freelance, and so you could do anything you want with Lobo. So that's why if you read the book, I added in zombies and all kinds of stuff, because I thought, what do I know? I know zombies. And I knew Lobo, and they really gave me the freedom. And my editor, this guy Ian Sattler, who we became super good friends, still one of my best buddies, and actually we might be working on something together, not for DC, but because he left when they moved to the West Coast. Too much information, but anyway, it was an amazing experience for me. Amazing, nerve-wracking beyond belief. It's the first time I had to write dialogue, because I'd never done that in my life. And everything I wrote for about a month just seemed like the dumbest, cheesiest dialogue ever written. And then I finally got over it, because my editor kept pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. And I was happy with the way it turned out. And I guess it did okay. And I've had offers to do more. It's just been a timing thing. But I would love to, whether it's DC, Marvel, whatever it may be. I've got a buddy of mine runs IDW, and he's hit me up about doing a Judge Dredd story, which obviously would be a good fit. So, and I have an idea, which I actually ran by Grant Morrison. I got Grant Morrison on my brain because we're friends, and I was over at Seth Meyers earlier, and Grant's on tonight, and anyway. But I ran this story idea past him, and then he gave me my ending, basically. And I'm like, oh my God, well now I can't use that, because he goes, no, it's yours, take it. And I'm like, oh my God, Grant Morrison just gave me the ending to my Judge Dredd story.
That's incredible.
Insane.
Dude, what's, at this point, having read the book and hearing those stories, what's left on the mind-blowing dream realized list? You were a walker on Walking Dead. You're writing the comic book. You've written 2 books. Do I have to go into what Anthrax has done? I mean, what's left, man? What are the big dreams? What are the big goals moving forward? What are you working towards? What do you think?
Well, there's a TV show called Game of Thrones that I'm quite fond of.
Oh, you got to get that under the water, man.
One time in one of my many things, I have that web series Bloodworks through Nerdist, where I get to hang out with FX guys and usually get made up and then killed in all kinds of awesome ways. And I I got made up as a White Walker one time. I flew over in the makeup guy for Game of Thrones. I got made up in the whole thing, but wasn't actually on the show. It was just for my web series.
Got it.
So, of course, one of the goals now would be to actually get made up and have a cameo, and it is the final season coming up. So believe me, I'm working that as hard as I can.
So we
but,
put that out into the universe.
But it's kind of a big deal, that show. So it's not
Yeah.
as easy as
Yeah.
I would like it to be. But I would love to keep writing. Writing for me is now that I've done it, 2 books and the comics, and I would love to just keep doing more. I have an idea for another book, and I have comic ideas, and it's always just finding the time. Really finding the time, because obviously I'm super busy with Anthrax, and I can't commit to something unless I know I could really commit to it. And writing a book is a lot of work.
Totally. Well, I got a million questions, man, but I got to let you go. You got 1,000 things you got to go do. I know you're at the Strand tonight at 7. You're right down the street.
Yes.
So people here, head on down. You doing a signing down there?
Yeah, if you want to come to the Strand, I'm going to do a Q&A down there. There'll be a whole bunch more, and the books are there, obviously, and I'm going to sign them. And so please, it's only like a couple of blocks that way.
Brilliant.
12th
And then
Street.
those tuning in live are out there. Tomorrow you're at Book Review in Huntington, New York.
Yes.
There's more dates. Look them up. Guys, the book's amazing. I'm telling you, I said that just 2 stories alone that are worth the whole thing, but the book as a whole is fantastic. Access all areas. Make some noise. Scott Ian, come on, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.